Anyways.
So I definitely did a lot of preparation. I read the first book. I saw the new movie. And I saw that video, the YouTube video you sent me. So I did do my homework.
Oh, a lot more than I did. I watched the movie, and I've read the books a couple times. Oz doesn't find a German speech. Thanks very much, Timbo. All right, so we are going to share. I loved the original movie of Dune in 1984 when it came out. It's easy to remember because, you know, people think the world ended in 1984.
Well, you got Patrick Stewart in it, so.
Well, I gotta read a Bible verse. I guess that's what I guess I'm Uncle Oz. Give a Bible verse that sounds like it could come from Dune.
Do you know what's interesting about Dune is that the 1980s had Patrick Stewart as Gurney, I think that's his name, and the new one has the kid from the Goonies. Now he's a big grown-up.
Yeah.
So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they play. It's kind of cool because he was an '80s like teen star.
Here we go.
Josh Brolin.
He makes my feet like the feet of a deer. He causes me to stand on the heights. Psalm 1833. There we go. I said, give me a Bible quote inspired by Dune to ChatGPT. Give me that one. It's better ones, I think.
Are we going to talk about that YouTube video?
Yeah. I'm going to share it right now. All right. I think it's. Oh, hold on. Let me share this tab. I was sharing this. This is a video game. The developers are streaming Dune Awakening. This is more important. So people should play this MMO, Dune Awakening. Anyways, but we're going to share this tab instead. I almost want to play that game instead. You know what I'm saying? What happened? There we go. Oh, that's full screen. All right, let's play. I'm just going to play to the first, like the intro, just the first part.
History that was actually labeled as unfilmable when other attempts had previously fallen flat is at the top of the box office right now, with fans and critics clamoring for the most recent installment of the Dune series, with many unaware of the hallucinogenic and occultic underpinnings in the Islamic messianic secret in the film. Welcome back to the Good Fight Radio Show. I'm your host, Chad Davidson of Good Fight Ministries. And on today's episode, we're going to be looking at this new movie, Dune, actually the second installment of the series Dune that was written quite a long time ago, back in the 60s by Frank Herbert. And I think a lot of people are missing, because they're seeing so many beautiful things about the film, they're missing a lot of some of the underpinnings, some of the things and themes that are going on in there. And so to get deep into that, we want to talk about that with none other than the president and founder of Good Fight Ministries and pastor of Blessed Hope Chapel in Simi Valley, California, Pastor Joe Schimmel.
Amen, Chad. Yeah, we're so glad to be dealing with this, because this is, like you said, Chad, it's the most famous, popular book, science fiction book ever. And it's been made in this movie, like you said, was unfilmable. But now it's the cinematography and everybody's just raving about it. A lot of Christians are raving about it. It's like, wait, there's more to the picture than meets the eye, because you need to look at what is the underlying messages in this movie. And let's talk also about the author and what was he about. And just as, you know, Chad, we look at scripture, we read Holy Scripture, it's inspired by the Holy Spirit. The Bible warns about doctors of demons in the last days. Is it possible that this guy would open?
All right, so that's the intro. You have anything to add as an intro? Like, do you think it was just like a Islamic like thing, or?
No, I don't think his argument is very good at all, and it shows a kind of a major ignorance of the material.
Yeah.
yes, there is Islamic elements, but what it is it's science fiction. And I mean, it reminds me of Deception of a Generation. That's a movie that I recommend all the audience watch. You can probably watch it for free on YouTube. But it's these two guys, two basic brads that are sitting around, and they're crying about how bad He-Man is and how bad Scooby-Doo is, you know? And it's the same thing. It's like, and then if you watch the whole thing, there's lots of rants where they start ranting about, you know, things that have nothing to do with Dune, and they start talking about witches, and I'm just like, what does this have to do with? You don't understand the material you're talking about, you know?
Yeah.
So it's very kind of like out of touch. These guys are out of touch.
And we'll go into that more, but that was like an insult at the Bene Gesserit, was they called them witches. It wasn't like they were actually witches. And then they attacked like the Paul Atreides as like the Antichrist figure, but he was more the Messiah figure, but it was like a plant for the Bene Gesserit. And then like they treated Paul like he was this Messianic, like this figure throughout the whole series. He wasn't. Like he was the first two books mainly.
He's a complex character, and that's what Frank Herbert is trying to say, which they don't understand. Frank Herbert is critiquing the concept of a Messiah. Yeah. He's critiquing that idea of what a Messiah is, and what happens when a Messiah reaches kind of a fruition of their goals. And Frank Herbert's brilliant, and I think that's the problem, is that they're very kind of myopic and looking at this situation. They're using it to fit their own agenda and initiative, which I think is problematic.
Yeah. Did you see the movie today, you said, or no?
Yes, I did. Not the second one, but I watched the first one, and I've seen the 1980s one. So I'm familiar with that, and I know the books. Like, I know the synopsis of the later books too, but I primarily am more versed in the beginning.
Yeah, I cried for Chani again today, so like she's like a sympathetic character, like the Fremen girl that Paul is with.
Yes.
Yeah. So if people aren't familiar with you should read the books. They are, I would say, bar none, they are the best books ever written. Ever. People want to see The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings. Nope. No, they are it. People want to see like Charles Dickens. I will say
Dickens is good.
Dickens is good. I would say when it comes to character building, Dickens is probably a little bit better than Frank Herbert's, but a little bit better. Not that much better, but when it comes to world building, Frank Herbert stomps all over Charles Dickens.
Well, and I think what's really cool about Frank Herbert is he kind of engages all of these different religious traditions, and he kind of sees fusions. And I think his understanding of Buddhism and Islam being fused together is actually well understood. Yeah. And it shows his mastery of understanding religions. And a lot of people don't understand that, because a lot of the Muslims we see are Wahhabi Muslims. So, of course, they don't even go near Buddhism. But Buddhism and Islam, particularly Sufi Islam, work very well with each other.
And it's Sufi Islam and Buddhism. It's a mix.
That's it.
It's the same with and they don't even in the movie. I think they referenced the Orange Catholic Bible once in the movie. Yeah, if I remember right, in the first movie they did once. So in the Orange Catholic Bible was like a reformation of the Catholic Church after the Butlerian Jihad, which is like this war against artificial intelligence, which you don't learn about unless you read his son's books, Brian Herbert's books.
It's very good. It's a beautiful universe, and the thing is, they mock Frank Herbert, saying he was high on mushrooms, and I was like,
he might have tripped a few times, but not the entire time.
And why are you shaming people for taking mushrooms? Like, they're trying to shame people for using substances. I think that's disgusting. That was their goal. They're like, it's all, look at the spice. It's a hallucinogenic.
Don't get into this. I haven't used any narcotics for 5 years since I found God. I haven't used any hallucinogenics since like 1991, dude. Like, and I haven't found God. Like, you forget, whatever. Like, I hate when Christians do that shit. Like, let's watch the next part. I think the next part's like, I've listened to this. It's like 5 minutes. If you want to stop at any point, or if I want to, I'll stop. But we'll try to get through the 5 minutes. I might be hard to do though.
himself up in some way to the demonic world.
You know what, Joe? I don't just think it's possible. I don't just think it's probable. I think absolutely.
Absolutely.
And in fact, we can actually look at what has been said. In fact, here is what mycologist Paul Stamets said regarding the author, Frank Herbert.
A friend of his.
A friend of his, according to him. He said, quote, "When I met him early in the 1980s, Frank enjoyed collecting mushrooms on his property near Port Townsend, Washington. Quote, Frank went on to tell me that much of the premise of Dune, the magic spice that allowed the bending of space, the giant sandworms, the eyes of Fremen, the mysticism of the female spiritual warriors, the Bene Gesserits, came from his perception of the fungal life cycle, and his imagination was stimulated through his experiences with the use of magic mushrooms." So, Joe, even if I'm just from a cursory understanding, looking at that one quote, and by the way, this comes from an article on Yahoo, and the article is titled, quote, "Frank Herbert's Magic Mushrooms and the Psychedelic Science Behind Dune." If I am looking at this from a biblical perspective, and we understand that everyone has a worldview that is built upon the things that they believe, and for us, our worldview is not just bent on, our worldview is not only dedicated to, our worldview is completely subjugated to the word of God, and we take every thought captive to the obedience of Christ, and we find out that someone was using mushrooms, getting into psychedelics, and then all of this series that is the most read series ever, sci-fi history, and now a #1 box office hit, 2 #1 box office hits. It doesn't seem like it's an accident, and it seems positively spiritual.
Yeah, Chad, it's absolutely
Positively spiritual. Like, did you check this thing about the magic mushrooms?
Yeah, I was just talking about that. I think it's disgusting that they're doing that. They're trying to shame the work by saying that he was high, and I'm like, that's ridiculous. They can't prove that anybody wasn't high. Like, even if like in ancient times, people may have eaten foods that made them have have hallucinations. They didn't know. They didn't have like FDA approval on stuff, So
What's the Christian position on shrooms?
there is no position.
Yeah, I didn't think there was. Like,
This is all made up. I was actually having a debate in my class today because I'm a social work major, and we were debating it in social policy, and we were debating about abortion, and I'm like, this is not in the text. This is just made up stuff that these people are making up to fit their agenda. I'm like, most Christians don't even care about these things. It's only this really tight-knit, like super paranoid conspiracy theory ridden folks who care about this issue. So
yeah, I find it like different contrasting opinions with psilocybin and religious leaders. Like there's medical treatments when it comes to to it. So
this thing is just made up by fanatics. These are fanatics that are talking, and you're listening to them, and they're like, look at the mushroom, it's so bad, we're so perfect, we're so pure, we're so good, and look at these other people, they're so bad. And really, like, throughout this whole tirade, they don't really talk much about Dune. They know a few concepts and a few words that they bring up to kind of feign their knowledge of the material, but you can tell that it's a, what do they call this, smoke and a mirror show, you know what I mean?
I know there's like fantasy tropes about mice as selling or whatever, shrooms like symbiosis. Does anybody know like what that is in fantasy tropes? Fantasy trope about, I think it's in DNC. Mycecil, whatever. I know they're in D&D games, like the one I'm playing, or was playing, the new one that just came out. They had the little mushroom people that can speak to each other in D&D. So they've been around for a while. So I don't know what they're going on about here. Like, who cares? Like, I don't get it. And to make that connection, I don't get that connection from the Dune series. Do you? Like, the Fremen are not reading each other's minds, are they? Like, the blue eyes is just a chemical change. It's just causing it's causing people to live longer, and it's causing people to be healthier, and it causes an addiction, but there's no like negative side effects unless people get off the spice, the melange.
They don't understand the universe.
Yeah. Dune melange addiction. And the people that use it a lot get the blue eyes. Like, you have to be immersed in it a lot. It's not all people that use a melange that get blue eyes. But so it's only the rich that could really afford it. Yeah, it won't kill you unless you stop taking it. Well, the side effect is addiction. But if you take it, you have longer life and more health and stuff like that. Like, there's no like it's unless you're like the navigators, and it's how they do. What do they call the people that do mathematical computations? Since you just reread the book, what are the computer guys called? Mentats. So you get the mentats and stuff that can do the mathematical computations when they're on the spice. And you call them nerds. Thanks, Tim Bob. And so there's certain people, and the Bene Gesserit to do the Reverend Mothers need the spice to be able to transfer the memories and stuff like that. And to be able to do some of the stuff they do, they need the spice. But when they get the diaspora after Leto II with the diaspora, they find a substitute for the spice. Actually, it's like red spice or whatever they call it.
Amazing when you realize that the foremost science fiction book in the world is written by a guy who claims he was inspired through taking magic mushrooms, opening himself up to the spiritual world, opening up, as it's been said, his third eye, and all these revelations pouring through him. They weren't coming from his own consciousness, but through an altered state of consciousness. And the Bible warns that we open ourselves up to demonic beings, demonic entities. And since the Bible does warn about doctrines of demons in the end of days, and you specifically see warnings in Scripture about pharmakeia, hallucinogenic drugs in the end times. In fact, that word pharmakeia, pharmakous, pharmakon, the Greek words, it's a cognate group of words that are used 5 times in the Bible, are used 4 times in the book of Revelation, indicating this would be a specific problem in the end of days that people, Revelation 9:19 through 21, would refuse to turn from, but that it would just, no pun intended, but that it would mushroom in the end of days. And in the book of Revelation, Chad, it mentions that in Revelation 21:8, those who partake of pharmakeia, and they don't know how necessarily to translate it because we don't have a word that really captures it. So it's often translated magic arts, witchcraft, spells. It's sometimes translated dopings, druggings, because it's speaking of using drugs to open yourself up to the demonic world. The early church fathers talk about how that was a problem in their day, and it's a bigger problem even today. So what's interesting about this is Revelation 22:14-15 talk about those who practice.
Revelations 22:14-15. Revelations 22:14. Revelation 22:14. Blessed are they that do his commandments, that they may have right to the tree of life and may enter it through the gates into the city. What? Did you say 22:14? What? I must have heard him wrong, right? 15. Outside of the dogs, those who practice magic arts, the sexually immoral, the murderers, the idolaters, and everyone who loves and practices falsehoods. What? I didn't hear that right?
Interesting about this is Revelation 22, 14 to 15 talk about
What?
What does Revelation have to do with this?
I just read it. I just read 22, 14, and 15. Let's see what he says.
those who practice pharmakeia won't enter into the heavenly city. But what
Nothing about pharmakeia with Revelations 22, 14, and 15.
And it has nothing to do with what's even being talked about. That's what's so crazy about this. They're just like showboating, and they're like, we want to hate on this property, and we're going to showboat it and just push our initiative and agenda. It's sickening.
Blessed are they that do his commandments, that they may have right to the tree of life, and may enter into and through the gates into the city. For without are dogs and sorcerers and warmongers and murderers and idolaters and whosoever loveth and maketh the life. Oh, sorcerers. They think sorcery means pharmacology. They think sorcery means medicine. Right? I think that's what they think that means.
Yeah. They don't even know what they're talking about. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I've heard this before.
Their own mythology and stuff. It's pretty sad.
Yeah, I think I've seen flat earthers say this before, that sorcery means I've seen a flat earther say it's pharmacology. Yeah, pharmakeia. Yep, drugs and sorcery. For the Greek word for sorcery is pharmakeia. Yep, here it is. So that's what he's talking. He's saying pharmacy. So any medicine is sorcery. Yeah. What they really mean is alchemy, like something else. But they think alchemy is medicine. Medicine is alchemy. So like COVID, like vaccinations, all that stuff is sorcery. Drugs and sorcery. Pharmakeia. Yeah. So that's what he means. He means medicine. Can open a pathway to the demons. Not just the magic shrooms. It's weird. That's why they burned women at stake for understanding herbology. Yes, it is, Stephanie. Yes, it is. But I mean, some of your friends talk about this stuff. I mean, I don't mean your friend Stephanie, but in that community, like they go on about this sorcery and pharmacology. I in my debate against Dustin and Ross, they said neither of them said they do pharmakeia or sorcery, that they don't go to doctors or dentists because it's sorcery. Like they use the same language. That's how I knew it. That it was sorcery, because of my debate with Dustin Nemos. He said these same things.
Yeah, after he called you a Jew, right?
Well, no, this was after he called me a Nephilim.
Yeah, I'm joking. You know what I mean. It's just I'm being sarcastic.
Yeah, I don't mean to call him your friend, Stephanie. I'm like, what's the word when you say somebody's associated? Like, it's an
You're being
association
facetious.
fallacy.
You're being sarcastic and facetious.
It's an association fallacy. I apologize for it, Stephanie.
What's even more amazing is the Bible talks about the whore of Babylon, and it's this prostitute that rides the beast, the Antichrist, to power, that she'll deceive the world through her pharmakeia. She'll be using these hallucinogens.
See, pharmakeia. You mean sorcery. It's most people see it as sorcery, like magic, but they actually mean pharmakeia. We don't mind you here, Stephanie. I enjoy your. I still think you're wrong about belief, but whatever.
Through the mass drug trafficking and so forth. And this is what's amazing, Chad, is he's into this, but the main pursuit that everybody has in the early Dune books is something called spice. It's also called melange. And that's where in the dunes, they're trying to harvest it because you need it for all those things, space travel. You need it for to decrease aging and so forth. But you also need it to enhance your occult psychic abilities. And it's
No, that's not what the spikes is for. The occult psychic abilities. No, there's no psychic abilities.
He's talking about the Bene Gesserit. I mean, he doesn't know what he's talking about, you know.
Well, even the Bene Gesserit don't have occult psychic abilities. Like, they don't have that.
But like the idea of like the voice and the telepathy type of thing is, but what is occult? It's just this made up word to just, you know, talk about anything negative. This is the problem with these arguments. They're saying nothing. It reminds me of what Shakespeare said. It's a poor player on a stage, sound and fury signifying nothing. This is what these people are doing.
The spikes isn't why they're able to do that. They're able to read body language. They're able to project their voice. Not like it's like ventriloquism, and they're able to modulate their voice to influence people. But it's not magic. There's nothing magical about it.
And I get it, but
voice
they
projection.
don't.
It's about controlling, manipulating people with their voice. It's not magic.
Well, I think for people, magic is something you don't understand. I mean, these people are making a mockery of Christianity. These people who are talking, they're making a mockery of Christianity. They're making a mockery of Dune. It's sad, you know?
Yeah.
interesting because the Bene Gesserit, who are this priesthood of women who are seeking to rule the world, this divine feminine, which is another thing that's rife in the occult right now.
Divine feminine. Oh Lord, a woman having divine aspects. What a horrifying thing to imagine.
And they're not seeking to rule the world. That's another thing he gets wrong. As the leader said at the end of the second movie, he's like, I'm not on a side, Jessica. Like, and she teams up with Paul in the end anyways. Like, she doesn't have a side. Her side is for what's best for humanity. Like, they want to guide humanity to survive. But they were trying to control humanity too much, and it was leading to humanity's stagnation. That was the problem with the Bene Gesserit. Stupid. You can't even pronounce it right. I can never pronounce it right either. Somebody corrected me a long time ago. It was like, it's Bene Gesserit. Whatever. I always said Bene Gesserit or whatever.
Doesn't matter. I mean, the sad thing is that the people are... what they're doing is that it's like, you know, it's like, I want to give you an example. It's like a person who really knows nothing about whatever, like a book, right? But what happens is they read like a Sparks Notes version of it, or they hear people talking about it, and they gain the information of that book. And then what they do is they use those points that they learn to try to make themselves seem like they're an expert on the material. But really their expertise is just the Spark Notes or just listening to someone talking about it. So they play this game that makes it appear that they know what they're talking about when they really don't.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, they were trying to breed the Kwisatz Haderach. That was like the male version of a Bene Gesserit. So they're actually trying to create a male Bene Gesserit that could like have past memories. Like they had genetic memories. They were trying to breed a male version with genetic memories, which is science fiction, but whatever.
But it's problematic in the story. What they're doing is actually not a good thing. They're trying to control something that they really can't control. It actually kind of links to sort of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, where Victor Frankenstein is trying to play with things that it's really out of his power and control. And that's the same thing with the Bene Gesserit, trying to manipulate bloodlines and do these types of things. And it doesn't necessarily go out the way that they really want it to, you know?
No, it didn't.
Paul Atreides is a tragic hero, you know, once you go further throughout the books.
Yeah. But he never destroys them. Like, they still survive forever.
Sure.
Like, because he still needs them. Well, Leto does. Leto the second. Oh, anyways, I'm not going to go. You know who the best story is Duncan Idaho's. Like, he has the best storyline.
Well, it's funny that what's his name, Aquaman, is playing him.
Aquaman's playing Duncan. Oh yeah.
Yeah, he is. Jason. It's really they did the
It
same
does
thing.
make funny. It is funny though. The Aquaman's playing Duncan Idaho. If anybody's a whore of Babylon, it's Duncan Idaho.
That's correct.
Now, if you don't know the reference, it's because you haven't read the Dune books.
Well, these people don't know. They don't know the books. They just saw a movie and they don't really understand it. Ugh.
Yeah.
It's kind of aggravating when people take like, IPs and things that people really care about, and then they just manipulate them. It's kind of gross, honestly.
Yeah, because Duncan is actually like the perfect genetic man, to spread across the universe. It's sort of cool. Like, so Bleedo the Second sort of does that. I'm looking forward to seeing like all these Duncans get killed cool. Over and over again.
The Duncan Idaho of the 80s movie is he just looks like a regular guy. And it's kind of creative to put Jason Momoa as Duncan Idaho. Because like Jason Momoa was sort of like the ideal man. Like he's this perfect like alpha male type. So I think it was actually really good casting.
Well, so with Duncan Idaho in the books, he's like the woman's man everybody loves. Sure. Everybody loves Duncan Idaho.
No, but I'm saying versus the 80s, like was it Lynch, the Lynch movie?
Yeah.
I don't think that the casting was as good.
No.
He was just a regular dude, and I'm like, this is not really Duncan Idaho. And I'm like, okay.
And he basically became the new version of the Bene Gesserit too. Like when he woke all his memories of all his past incarnations.
Right.
If you remember that in the storyline.
I do.
Anyways, he dies. That was awesome.
He dies, and it's just
he comes back again.
Yeah, he comes back.
Paul comes back again, and then Leto comes back again. The father comes back. Anyways, it's cool, but that's in the future.
Yeah, it's way better than whatever we're getting from these fellows.
Well, hopefully we get into all the Planet X and stuff, and I don't know if they'll do that in the movies. Like they haven't even touched on like any of that stuff. Is it the Ixians or Planet X? I can't. It's the X, isn't it?
Yeah.
The cloners. I think it's the X. It's not a spoiler warning. You got to read the books are like 60 years old, Max. How can it be a spoiler? If you haven't read the Dune novels, you friggin' need to. It's like this is a classic, best series ever written, and you won't remember it after you read the first 3 books. Yeah. All right.
You have Ben Gesserit using Spice Milan, which they're harvesting, and everybody wants it to enhance their occult abilities, psychic abilities. And it's interesting, they are seeking to bring forth this Christ figure, this messianic figure, who's basically ultimately the Antichrist, when you really look at this, although he's portrayed.
How's he the Antichrist? How is Paul the Antichrist? You're muted.
It's nonsense. It's just nonsense that they're saying. They're like, anything that's a bad thing, it's the Antichrist. I'm like, it's a fictional character from a. Why would Paul be the Antichrist? The Antichrist doesn't even exist in that lore. It's like the same thing, like telling, a Buddhist that, Satan is running your life. I'm like, well, Buddhists don't believe in Satan. So what are you saying? It's nonsense.
So why is Paul even important? So maybe like we can set the stage. So who is Paul to the Bene Gesserit, if anything? I don't know if he's.
What's the question? Sorry, I was just eating something.
Well, I can explain. So Paul's not even supposed to exist to the Bene Gesserit. Paul wasn't even supposed to be born. Jessica decided. So the Bene Gesserit can decide if they're going to give birth to a male or a female. Jessica disobeyed orders from the Reverend Mother. What do they call the head Bene Gesserit?
Like the Moheen, Helen something Moheen. Yeah.
So she disobeyed orders and chose, because she loved Leto Atreides, the Duke Leto, and she decided to give Leto an heir. And Leto never married. Leto decided, and Jessica was his basically his slave, his mistress,
Like a concubine.
a concubine. Yeah, Jessica was his concubine, and he couldn't marry her because she wasn't royalty, even though technically she was. But that would be a spoiler. I'm not going to tell you who she was. You can read the books. I recommend reading the books, not watching the movie, but you'll find out in the movie. It is a shocker. I'm just telling you that. It is a shocker. It's a fun shocker. But so she was supposed to give birth to a girl, a daughter. So the Bene Gesserit never wanted a son. They didn't want Paul. So this guy has no clue what he's talking about. So they wanted to have a daughter. They wanted Jessica to have a daughter. And then there was Fade on the Harkonnen side, and they wanted Fade to marry the daughter, Jessica's daughter, and to produce an offspring. And that offspring was potentially going to be the Kwisatz Haderach.
Oz, should we give like a brief overview about the Dune story, just so for folks who don't know about it?
Yeah, if you want to. Yeah, they were mad. The Bene Gesserit were mad at Jessica. They were upset she had a son. That's a whole premise of like the beginning of the first movie.
True.
Yeah, go. I mean, I guess I can explain it. So this is in the future. There's been this the Empire sort of reached this stagnant place. They rely upon the spice trade from this planet called Arrakis, the House Harkonnen. And House Harkonnen to me is like the evils. It's like hell. Like literally, like it has a black sun, and like it's like the black sun is like this dirty, filthy, disgusting planet run by the Baron Vladimir Harkonnen, who's basically descended from Hitler. Basically, I think he is technically supposed to be, but basically descended from the worst people from human history. And he rules Harkonnen. Then he runs Arrakis, so he mines Arrakis, and they deal with Fremen who are they're not technically native because everybody's technically native to Earth, but they're the people that settled on Arrakis. They sort of are nomadic people that have been driven from place to place to place, not wanted anywhere, and they finally settled to this Dune-like planet, and they came here to settle, and had lived here peacefully for a while until the spice was found, and then all of a sudden people wanted to go mine the spice, and treat them like the natives that they were, and sort of used them for labor and stuff like that. And then you had the Carradine. Is it Carradines was the Emperor's house? I think it was. Carragins. Anyways, you had the Emperor's house, and they had the Sadikins or whatever. Their soldiers were like from a prison planet, and they were like these brutal soldiers, the best combatants ever to exist, the best soldiers ever to exist. The House Harkonnen soldiers were like middle tier, but House Atreides had Leto was this inspiring leader that could like rally troops, and he had collected a bunch of like really good battle hardened leaders and trainers and inspiring leaders around his battle flag, and he was training a cadre of troops that can compete with the Emperor's troops, and the Emperor was sort of worried about House Atreides, so he conspired with House Harkonnen to set up House Atreides to destroy him. So now I'm giving away sort of some of the plot for the first movie. So basically, House Atreides agreed to take over stewardship of the planet Arrakis and to mine the spice. They had a transfer of power, and then right away, within like a week or whatever, it was like really soon after House Atreides took over the planet. And there's a bunch of stuff. I'm not looking at all the details. That the Emperor sent his troops, the Sardaukar, I think it is Sardaukar troops. Can't remember. Anyways, he disguised his troops as House Harkonnen troops, and he attacks the Atreides, even though they figured out that it wasn't the Harkonnen troops, but they massacred them all. But their doctor, oh yeah, the doctors used the spice too. And they took an oath that they couldn't break their oath. What were the doctors called, Issa? I can't remember now. The Suk doctors. Anyways, so the doctors couldn't break their oath, but the Baron Harkonnen had kidnapped the person he loved and tortured her and tortured him and got him to break his oath. Anyways, but he was able to rescue Jessica and Paul and save them. He knocked them out and sent them off with like the ducal signet ring. And then Baron Harkonnen killed Leto, the Duke. Anyways, Paul was rescued, went out to the desert and stuff like that. And that's sort of like the first movie.
I mean, how I would simply tell the story myself is just that it's sort of like a space opera that tells you about kind of feudalism and kind of how there's warring factions and that kind of things that, like our past kind of reflects our future, that we
Well,
still
they don't
have
war.
desires.
There's no wars, which is which Leto II sees as a problem, is there's no war. Paul sort of sees that as a problem too. There's no more war. Well, Paul sees that as a problem. There's no more war. So Paul thinks he has to fix it by going on a jihad. Well, that's giving away the second movie. I shouldn't say that. Sorry, spoiler.
But it's this idea of that there's like power structures, feudalism, all of these kind of things exist, and it's like, and you see this perpetuation of it, even if you don't have like every exact structure. That is what the thing that we see, and it's like, and that's kind of interesting,
Yeah. Well, that's a whole story arc, is how we went into this, like, if you go through all the books, we got into this stagnant empire that relied upon this infrastructure, the spice, and how do we break out of that stagnation? And that's what this story arc does, is breaks us out of that stagnation and gets us into a new age of enlightenment and expansion and stuff like that. And then we come face to face with our ancient nemesis, and that's where that's when Frank Herbert died, unfortunately. So that's where his son took over. Anyways, let's play this. We haven't got through the second part yet.
Trade for many, the average moviegoer thinks this guy's great when they don't read all the Dune books. But it's interesting.
I doubt this guy really read them. Anyways,
they are riding the beast. They're bringing the power, and they're using hallucinogens, pharmakeia. They're using spice to enhance his psychic abilities, so he'll be fully open to the spirit world. You see him after he's been involved in this, hearing voices and everything else, and increasing his telepathic abilities and so forth. So this is just right out of the occult. And according to Aleister Crowley, the Satanist, he talked about the Whore of Babylon.
What does Aleister Crowley have to do with this?
Absolutely nothing.
It's nonsense. It's so frustrating.
Yeah. And Paul doesn't have psychic powers.
He doesn't even understand the lore, and then he's talking about the books.
No. He can see different pathways. He can see different paths into the future. And he has genetic memory of the past. Like, he doesn't understand the lore.
worship me. He wanted to be the beast himself, take strange drugs, and so forth. It's just interesting. And if that was the only piece we're going to talk about, when you see how the pieces fall together, your mind's gonna be blown, because there's a lot.
There's no pieces that have come together yet. Not a single one's come together. So nothing's come together. When two of them come together, we should maybe we have a couple, but none of. I understand him, Stephanie, but I don't have to accept his claim.
A lot of occult, occult underpinnings, as Chad mentioned earlier in this whole series.
And one thing also we want you to know, and we don't even typically say it, because if we're spoiling something for you, we want to spoil it because you're realizing that this is something that I want no fellowship with it, but I want to expose the unfruitful works of darkness here. But we will give you a spoiler. We're going to be telling you what happens in the movie. And I also want to let you know that I myself had an allergy attack. So
no fellowship
if
with
I'm
fun.
not able to see on the right side.
No fellowship with the movie.
No fellowship with fun. That's what his position is. Let's not have fellowship with fun. Things that are fun and entertaining and great for your life, let's not have fellowship with it.
But they don't do any spoilers for the movie.
I doubt they even watched it. They probably watched a trailer. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I understand where they're coming from, Stephanie. But they're connecting dots that aren't there. They're stretching the dots to make them fit when they just they shouldn't do that. It's conspiracy theory thinking.
That is the reason.
He has not been doing any spice.
I have not.
Attest to that.
I have not done any spice, and I've been saved now for 15 years.
Praise the Lord.
Nothing.
I hate that shit. Why does that matter? He's been saved for 15 years, so he hasn't done any drugs. Do you have to be a Christian to not do drugs?
No, you don't.
No, you don't. I know from personal experience.
There's a lot of people who don't do drugs.
Yeah.
I was talking to Max. He's not doing that stuff either. So what? Who cares?
Yeah.
And maybe some people on their journey did it at some point, and now they're not doing it. Maybe that was a part of their journey at some point earlier on in their life, and they said, hey, I'm done with it. This is nonsense. Yeah. And it's all propaganda, and it's not talking about Dune. We're here about Dune, not about your Christian conspiracy.
I did psychedelics a couple times when I was 20 and 19. So I haven't done psychedelics for longer than he has. And I've never been a Christian. So I haven't done them for 30 years. I did them a couple times. 3 times, I think. So there. So in my 51-year life, I've done them 3 times. And I'm not a Christian. I hate that shit. It's like I've had Christians tell me that I should become Christian so I won't be racist. I'm like, what? I'm not racist. How's that follow? Why is being atheist make me racist?
And I'll also push back. Who do you think enslaved all the people in the United States? Who assaulted women of color? Who were these people? I don't think they were atheists. I think a good chunk of them said that they believed that Jesus was their Lord and Savior. That didn't stop them from assaulting innocent women. So I'm just saying,
Spicy whatsoever in my life. But praise God, we want to give those warnings though, in case someone got offended for some reason. But we don't care if you're offended about us telling you about a movie that probably shouldn't be seen as a point of entertainment, but rather if you are exposing it. And Joe, if we're looking at this and we're seeing somebody obviously heavily influenced by drugs, we are seeing, and we've tried to express as clearly as possible, the end times deception. In fact, as you mentioned, I mean, Revelation 18:23 makes it clear that the whole world.
Revelations 18:23. Let's see what that says. And the light of a candle shall shine no more at all in thee, and the voice of the bridegroom and of the bride shall be heard no more at all in thee. For thy merchants were the great men of the earth, for by thy sorceries Were all nations deceived? Also, probably vaccinations, I bet. But they're talking about vaccinations.
Is deceived
Yeah.
by the merchants and their pharmakeia, right? So these guys are pushing
No,
drugs. It's not an accident. But then opening yourself up, and this was interesting. This was also in the Yahoo article. It says this, that Herbert had taken peyote, which is a controlled substance often turned into a tea in Central America. Once again, very hallucinogenic, something that a lot of those in Native America and so forth were using. And a lot of people would probably trace some of that demonic stuff, whether it's, seeing gods in the trees and so forth, of what was going on there as well. But it also says this, and this was a name drop in the article that I found interesting, when it says, quote, he was also heavily into Carl Jung and his idea of collective unconscious.
They shouldn't have talked to Jordan Peterson, should they? Here in Australia, veterans are treated by psilocybin. They are, because it helps destroy ego, and it can help with PTSD. But you got to be careful that some people can actually have negative consequences too. It depends on the person, but yeah. So it should be supervised. Oh, I lost Issa. That's okay. But Carl Jung was a psychologist. They go on a rant about Aleister Crowley again. You back, Issa?
I'm here. Sorry, I had someone called me. The Aleister Crowley stuff is nonsense.
Yeah. So they tied him back to Carl Jung again, and this is where they tie him to Aleister Crowley.
They don't even understand Carl Jung. It's so ridiculous. They're just doing any conspiracy. It's like separation with Kevin Bacon, or 6 degrees of separation of Kevin Bacon. They're like, how does this connect? It's ridiculous.
Well, I bet. Well, why couldn't they tie Jordan Peterson to Carl Jung, and then Carl Jung to Aleister Crowley, and then
so the Jordan Peterson is Aleister Crowley. He's connected to Aleister Crowley.
Well, then he's connected to the Orthodox Church. So the Orthodox Church is Satan.
Yeah, that's right. That's right with Aleister Crowley.
So Christianity. So these people are Satanists.
According to their ridiculous logic, yes.
Yes, because it's 5 steps away. We're watching a Satanist video. Anyways, next.
Now, Joe, I think this is an important aspect to bring out, because you have a lot going on there with this Ben Gesserit group. This, obviously, they're witches. I mean,
yeah,
they're not witches. Obviously, they're witches. Obviously. People call them witches in the story as an insult. It's not, they're not actually witches. They don't do magic.
And are witches actually bad? If we go to the Hebrew scriptures, do you remember that King Samuel, or not King Samuel, King Saul summons summons the prophet Samuel through the witch of Endor? Isn't that wild? Yeah. The witch of Endor is used to bring back a holy prophet. So if this witch is so bad, then how could she be able to do that? How was her magic able to summon a holy prophet of God? It sounds ridiculous.
Yeah, I don't know.
And with all the baby stuff, there does seem to be a lot of stuff going on sexually. I mean, this is some demonic stuff. And by the way, it is dark. Like this movie, everything about it is completely just a dark element. And you're seeing some of the stuff and seeing the drugs, and it's like, well, where on earth is this going?
Yeah, that's a good question, because you mentioned
that planet's dark, and so they had a couple dark scenes. But that planet, that's Harkonnen. It's not. What's the planet?
Yeah, Planet Harkonnen.
Planet Harkonnen. They have a black sun. If you go outside, everything's white. It's part of the story.
And the House Harkonnen are not the protagonists; they're the antagonists. It's the same problem that Phil Phillips and whatever the guy's name is on Deception of the Generation. They're like attacking the villains and saying, "Look how satanic they are! Look how satanic they are! They're supposed to be satanic. Give me a break! They're the villains."
The Harkonnens are like satanic. It's like hell.
Yeah.
Dune is like the planet that's like forsaken, that's trying to become the new Garden of Eden. The House Atreides is like the good place. It's just so weird that they went to go help the Fremen from the evil people. It's like they got it flipped. Like those good people got, like, the Harkonnens were the bad guys, people.
That's exactly the point. They're angry at the villains. I'm like, you're supposed to be angry at the villains. Like, they're not the heroes. Like, do you not understand the story? You're not supposed to like these guys.
They do say that, but these were the Harkonnens. No shit. That's what the darkness is. Like, their planet's dark. It's all oily, black, dark.
It's a dark element. We cannot do fellowship with fun movies.
They pluck all their hairs out. They're all scabby in the stories and stuff. They do. They infect themselves with stuff in their skin. Like, they do all this disgusting stuff. They eat people. They have slavery. The ink fine scar on Gunny or Gurney Halleck, and he's in the second movie too. But Gurney Halleck is one of the main people that helped train Paul Atreides, one of the main house members of House Atreides. He's their weapons master, I think he was.
I was talking about him. Yeah, Gurney Halleck was played by Josh Brolin, and he was played by Patrick Stewart in the '84 one.
Yeah. Well, he does a good job in the second movie too.
I think Josh Brolin is a good actor, and I was, because it's so funny to see him from Goonies, because I love the Goonies. I don't know if you saw that, the '80s movie, The Goonies.
Oh yeah.
But he's so fun in that. It's funny to see the leader of the Goonies is now like in everything. So.
Yeah, because he's supposed to hook up with Jessica eventually, so we'll see how that works out if they do that in the movie. But we'll see what happens. But Gurney Halleck was like, you got the scar from what's his face. Shit, I can't remember his name now. The nephew that was running.
Was it Freya? Something Freya?
No, it was the other nephew. Nephew of Baron Harkonnen. Not Fade, it was the other one. Darn it. Oh, a stupid thing. The one played by Batista. I had the name on the tip of my tongue earlier. Doesn't matter. Let's continue on. Rabban, thank you, Rabin. He's the one that whipped Gurney Halleck and caused the scar. Yeah, I thought it was Rabin. Was it Rabban? Doesn't matter.
It's Rabban. It doesn't matter. Yeah.
But he's the one that caused the ink fine scar on the face with a whip. And then he ends up, Gurney Halleck gets his vengeance in the end.
I mean, I'm going to be honest, watching the new one, I think the 80s one is good for what it is, but it tries to cover a lot of ground. It covers a lot of ground, and it doesn't have, it's not able, I don't think there was enough resources to kind of like do the whole thing justice, but I think it's a great thing for what it is,
No, violence no, is sometimes the answer, like self-defense. Like, I'm fine with that. I'm not a pacifist. I'm fine with self-defense, and that was self-defense. Like, I'm totally fine with what they did.
Carl Jung and the collective unconscious, and a lot of people believe that Jung was himself influenced by a lot of Crowley's teaching, but tried to.
I looked this up. Did you look this up? There is zero evidence that Jung was influenced by Aleister Crowley's teaching. Zero.
They made it up.
They made it up.
Make it more scientific with, demons being mere archetypes, as Crowley would sometimes pretend, and so forth, and the collective unconsciousness and so forth. But it's really interesting because when you have not just now keep in mind, it could be said, well, yeah, spice didn't have to be a bad thing in the Dune. Well, guess what? He's influenced by these spirits, right? That end up influencing him to write this, and spice becomes this really wonderful thing. It's like a metaphor for like oil, and
And let's be clear, Carl Jung and Aleister Crowley were the same age. They were both born in 1875. So it wasn't like Carl Jung would have learned from Aleister Crowley. These guys are stupid. What's up, Brenda?
Good evening.
I ended up banning Christ Brings the Sword earlier today, so we won't have his wonderful voice on stage.
Oh, okay.
Unfortunately.
I watched Dune last night too.
Oh, good. I watched it this afternoon. Did you cry at the end for Chani?
No.
No, why not? She's standing on the hill waiting.
I identified. I understand her.
Okay.
Her being upset. She doesn't want. It's like the thing is that this is just pretty common throughout human history, which is that marriages were political arrangements between competing factions, and so Muad'Dib that's what he's doing by marrying Princess Aurelian. He's uniting, opposing factions. And then what typically happens then is the marriage is formal, and then he goes and has his life with his mistress, who would be Chani, but she doesn't like that. I can see why.
Well, she doesn't know yet, right? At this point in the story arc, like she hasn't talked to Jessica yet, and right, because Jessica has a heart-to-heart with her and tells her, right, like eventually.
Oh boy, like I said, it's been years and years since I read Dune. I haven't read it. It's been forever. And I could predict what was going on because I knew they only had so much time, and they've got to get, okay, she's got to drink the water of life. He's got to ride a worm. Then he's got to drink the water of life. Then he has to attack the rim with atomics.
Yeah.
And then they have to have the final scene with Raoul. What, everybody knows this stuff. So then they have to have the final soon. I was looking for "Get Out of My Mind."
Yeah,
I was looking for that, but they didn't do that.
No,
and no interaction with the Emperor and the Spacing Guild.
No, I know. Yeah.
But they didn't have time for it. That's like you said. You're right. They just didn't have time to fit everything in.
Yeah, see what happens in movie 3. And I was just talking about that. Like, are they going to get into like the Gurney Halleck and Jessica story? Are they going to, like, I don't know how much time they're going to have.
Well, they have to cover the Gollum of Idaho Duncan.
Yeah, are they going to do that? Like, that's a lot.
I don't know.
We were just talking about that. They were talking on this. We were watching this. They were talking about the Whore of Babylon. It's like, if anybody's a Whore of Babylon, it's going to be Duncan Idaho.
And I'd forgotten the timeline. In the David Lynch movie, Alia is already a little girl, but I don't remember.
No, I think she was pregnant for like 4 years.
What?
Yeah, in the books, I think she delayed it 4 years. I think she was pregnant before they left their planet.
I don't remember these details at all.
It's been a long time, but I seem to remember that. But she never told Leto that she was pregnant with the girl. So, if I remember right, or she?
Well, that would make Alia the child that was supposed to be, rather than
Yes,
right, because
yeah,
the Bene Gesserit wanted her to give him a sister and deny him the son, and out of her love for him, she gave him a son,
yeah,
because they wanted a Kwisatz Haderach that they could control.
yeah. Which was supposed to be Fade and and Jessica's daughter were supposed to have a kid. It wasn't supposed to be Paul,
right? Right.
That Paul's son, actually.
Yeah, that was the future that they planned for them. Yeah.
Yeah. Paul was too early. But
which I think just shows the problematic system of the world, that these people are not really good people. They're not noble people. They're manipulating and controlling. And, it's a hubris.
Yeah. Well, that's what Paul saw. Paul saw a path. Paul saw the problem that the Bene Gesserit had too much control, and he saw a path forward. But Leto, his son, I'm giving him a spoil. It doesn't matter. Leto, his son, saw it. No. We need the control because humans aren't ready yet. Before it disported, we need to control them so hard until they break free on their own. Like, that's what he did. That's what Leto the Second saw. But
yeah, the end of the series is about escaping a sort of a planned garden of humanity versus freedom, and a small group of people are able to break away in their no ships away from the rest of humanity and establish their own place somewhere where they will not be controlled by the face dancers are the ones who are ultimately the masters of humanity.
Yeah. It's an awesome story. These chuckleheads in their review of the satanic version of
Panic.
Dune,
It's satanic panic.
Yeah, they think that Paul was what the Bene Gesserit were trying to produce. Like, no, you guys obviously didn't read the books or watch the movies.
Well, even in the movie, the Reverend Mother is pissed off.
Yeah,
in both of them. At Jesse,
I don't think they saw the movie, to be honest. I think they saw one of those trailer house things where people pull a bunch of clips together and you watch that. That's what I feel they watched. So they did see some parts of the film, but they didn't see a whole cohesive film. It doesn't seem like they did.
Yeah.
The other thing that's more current is that what this section of the movie is about Paul trying to avoid being a religious messiah who sweeps over the known universe, murdering everything in his path. And all of the futures that he can see lead to him doing that. And so he takes the water of life so that he can find what he says is his narrow path through the. Okay, but he's looking for a narrow path where that doesn't have that horrible outcome. And I don't know that these people really understand that Paul is the bad guy. Basically. Yeah, Paul's the bad guy, at least in the futures where he becomes a marauding religious leader who
and he does it. And the final line, right? Or almost final line. They don't concede to you being emperor, and he's like, "What shall we do?" It's like, lead him to the Garden of Eden or whatever.
Yeah, show them what is he? Show them the way to paradise.
Show them the way to paradise, which is he called them to the jihad. Like, go show them the way to paradise.
What I think is fascinating is it's showing you what a Messiah is. What can a Messiah lead to? Because the way we do it in a lot of our societies, we idealize the Messiah. We say, this Messiah is just going to bring peace. But what Frank Herbert's doing is saying, let's explore what a Messiah could be. what does the Messiah look like in the long run? If the Messiah continues
Right.
to exist, what actually happens with that? This is what's so cool about science fiction, because it's exploring that. He's challenging this narrative that the Messiah is just this wonderful, good thing.
Also, speaking of another Messiah, you know, Jesus was supposed to be a Messiah. He's a failed Messiah. He really,
Supposed to
really
conquer.
was supposed to be a conqueror who threw off the Romans off of the Jews. That's what their Messiah was supposed to
That's
be.
what the Jewish Messiah believes in. Yeah, that's what the Jewish
Yeah.
Messiah is supposed to save the Jews from.
Yeah, Jesus is a failed Messiah.
He's supposed to
But
come back.
Well, yeah, he's supposed to come back. They took the failure and like groups that the cults that have these kinds of end times delusions do, when the end times doesn't happen, when the UFOs don't land on your hill and take you away to Arcturus or Sirius B or wherever, then you just invert it and you say, oh well, it was all planned that way from the beginning. That's how it was supposed to be, right? So it's really wasn't about this one thing. It's really about this other thing, which is, so they post hoc rationalized.
Yeah. Let's see if I think right now they just got done saying that Carl Jung was inspired by Aleister Crowley. They were born the same year. Oh, so dumb. Anyways.
Mr. Crowley.
This is Good Fight Ministries.
Water, and you really need it, and so forth. And anybody watching that, especially in the Harry Potter age that we live in right now, they're seeing how it can enhance
the Harry Potter age,
your occult, psychic abilities and so forth. That's what kids
Wizarding
are doing
world.
in mass right now. So it kind of pushes that whole thing. And Chad, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention this. Is again, Dune, 1965. On the heels of this whole thing, where spice is so glorified, you have the whole experimentation age and the hippie revolution, which was counterculture, which is now more mainstream today. And now you see a lot of so-called professionals talking about hallucinogens as though it's a really good thing, not letting people know that you're really, opening yourself to the demonic world. And it's interesting.
That was a legendary Gish Gollum. He just threw a billion things at us.
I know.
And he expects us to believe everything he said.
Wingardium Leviosa.
Wingardium. Potter is not like a Gen Z story. Like, it's not. It's so bizarre that these guys say that stuff. Like, he's my age, like, right? Like,
yeah, probably. J.K. Rowling stuff it's from like millennial.
Yeah, J.K. Rowling's older than I am. Let's see, J.K. Rowling's 58. She's 7 years older than I am. Harry Potter Book 1 published date 1997. Okay, so in 1997 I was 26? No, 24. So this guy had to be in his 20s, maybe 30 or something. Like, it's not outside of his age range. He just doesn't read books. Are you upset with J.K. Rowling, Brenda? I don't want to talk about her if you're upset about her.
I'm not hearing anything.
You don't hear me? You're just pretending like you don't hear her. Hello? Well, I'll move on.
Oops, my bad. My end.
Okay.
You can mute it. You can mute a tab at the top of the tab, and I had accidentally clicked it.
Oh, I thought you were joking.
No, I couldn't hear anything because I had accidentally clicked. You can click on the speaker icon at the top of a tab in Firefox.
I was talking about when J.K. Rowling wrote Harry Potter was in 1997. And this guy's going on about the age. This is the age of Harry Potter. I'm like, that's like when I was like 20, in my 20s. Like, what are you talking about, dude? Like,
what would you say this is the age of, though, as far as fantasy works?
It's still like the age of Harry Potter, I would say. It's like, I don't know.
Not
Star Wars,
not
maybe?
Lord of the Rings.
No, like,
The age of Marvel, maybe.
oh, maybe more of that. J.K. Rowling's unpopular again in social media. Like, whatever.
Oh, by the way, if people are following it, what Mr. Invincible is dropped on Amazon Prime.
Mr. Invincible? Okay.
That show, have you ever seen that show?
Yeah. I've watched the second season.
Yeah.
The one, the other comic, the animated series, right?
The animated one. I'm looking forward to the next installment of what is it? The Boys. That was
Oh yeah.
that show I really liked that show because it so deconstructs the superheroes.
The superhero arc, yeah.
And I don't forget his name. The actor who plays Homelander is just amazing.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know his name. The guy from Supernatural is going to plays Soldier Boy. He's on there now too. He's pretty good. John Cena's playing.
Oh, by the way, you're totally right, Oz. You're totally right. Andrew Tate is totally not at all homoerotic. No way, no how. That's definitely not.
Andrew Tate's not homoerotic?
Well, you mentioned that meme. That was Andrew Tate with the cigar.
Oh, did I do that? Yeah. I can't remember. I think I quote tweeted something. I said, "Oh, this."
Yeah.
Yeah. I said I wasn't gay though, so or bi. I said something. I retweeted something. Said I'm not bisexual. I did it. Anyways, I didn't know who it was. So.
Oh, that's Andrew Tate trying to figure out why he's got legal problems.
Oh.
And the sex trafficking would be a hint for him.
He's a dumbass.
Interesting. The Telegraph writes, Frank Herbert's magic mushrooms and the psychedelic science behind Dune. How Dune's author's love of hallucinogens and fungi inspired the trippiest space saga of our age. Well, you don't just think in terms of it inspiring this saga, but inspiring the masses. And what's interesting is this priesthood of women who are in touch with their occult abilities and enhancing them through spice to bring forth this false messiah who they will try to bring to the world as a messianic figure, even basically setting up the Fremen with a false prophecy about the coming messiah that they will be able to receive, knowing that it's not really true with regard to the Fremens, but it's their false messiah who they want to present as the real messiah. But what's crazy is there's also this sex magic thing going on with Aleister Crowley, not just using drugs. And
why did they bring up the sex magic thing?
What? Where is that? Because I don't recall sex magic in volume 2 here. I didn't see any of that.
There's no sex magic in the series either. You have the red, the other. What do they call the other the returning Bene Gesserit? What do they call those? The red ones. They do sort of sex magic, but it's imprinting.
But that's much later in the series. That's certainly not here.
Yeah, but it's not magic either. It's like they manipulate men with imprinting.
All right. The basic idea is that they're so good at sex that when a man has sex with one of the alternate Bene Gesserits, I forget their name too, they're so good at it that if he has sex with her, he's like, her slave.
Yeah. Sex can't ever be that good. Like, except for Duncan, of course, because you can't do that to Duncan Idaho. But he could do it to one of them. Well, they do it to each other. Because Duncan's a stud. Literally, Duncan's a stud. Like, they stud him out for thousands of years. I love Duncan. Duncan's like the best character in that whole series.
with what he called the Whore of Babylon, which would be a woman figure typifying the harlot, which the Bible warns is Satan's false church. And that's what.
Why does he keep calling the Bene Gesserit the harlot? It's like so weird. So yes, the Bene Gesserit went around the world and implanted false religions. They did this. And they did it with the Fremen.
They did it to control populations.
Yeah. Like this part of the story. So they knew that Paul was not a Messiah. And Paul didn't want to be the Messiah. He fought against doing it. And Cheney didn't believe he was Messiah. The girl they show there that with the blue eyes that they highlight there, she never accepted him as a Messiah. She fought against it the whole time. She was from the north. The northern Fremen tribes, then they go against this too. They're so Americanized, these people here. And we'll get to that too. It's anyways.
These women seem to represent, the Scarlet Woman, Satan's false church. There's also this whole idea about sex magic.
It's the Scarlet Women, isn't it? Is it the Scarlet Women?
That memory is gone. I just can't remember.
And Dune. Is it Scarlet Woman?
The only thing I remember about there was an expansionary period, and then Bene Gesserits from the expanded diaspora come back, and instead of having blue eyes, they have golden eyes.
Yeah.
I don't remember what the significance of that was or anything.
And they wore red outfits. I remember that. But
I don't remember that.
And they didn't use spice because they used something, or they didn't use melange. They used some other chemical. Anyways.
Where Crowley would use the Whore of Babylon and try to breed forth super beings by bringing forth a being that would be possessed by a perfect soul, or really a demonic entity, to bring forth ultimately the ultimate Antichrist. He himself hoped to be the beast, as you know, Chad. And what's amazing is they are trying, when you look at what they're doing, the Bene Gesserit, they're trying to use this to bring forth a super being to rule the cosmos. And so it's hard for me to believe. Now, he may not have been fully into Crowley, into Crowley's stuff and not getting all these ideas. He was into the same demons that Crowley was in, because he was doing the same thing Crowley was doing and getting similar ideas from these demonic entities.
Amen. And before we even get into
Amen. What? Whatever.
Some of the messianic element that we have to talk about, we can't just, bypass that. I do want to point out some things from the novel that show that Herbert, who was high on drugs, by the way, but specifically having to do with sex. And this is what it says. And they're having an argument with how many sex positions there are, 51, 250,
that they can
and
use,
so forth, that they can use. And she says, quote, more, actually, if you count minor variations, I am an imprinter, which means I have mastered the 300 steps of orgasmic amplification. So it seems like obviously this guy's a pervert and, talking in this manner, it's just kind of disgusting. But Joe, obviously we could point that out. And as believers that we could entertain some sort of things, and people might be watching the film and be like, well, they're really, they're not showing a lot of sex. They imply things, but they're not showing a lot of it.
It may be coming in future Dune movies.
It definitely could. And a lot of that's because they want to make sure they get their PG-13 rating to push this nasty worldview stuff. But Joe, also, there
it's so prudish. Is it anti-Christian to know how many sex positions there are? Any Christians in the audience want to let us know? Any former Christians want to let us know? Did anybody hear any spoilers? Did you hear any spoilers, Brenda? Or
Nope.
no, me either. I didn't hear any spoilers.
Spoilers for for part 3?
No, this was the spoiler alert section we just went to.
Yeah, there's no spoilers.
No, I didn't hear anything.
Yeah, but they warned us that there were spoiler alerts. See, spoiler alert, spoiler alert, spoiler alert. I didn't hear any spoilers.
Nope, there aren't any.
Okay, so I don't think they watched the movie or read the books.
They talked openly about sex.
Well, the thing is, it's
There you
about
go.
Aleister Crowley. It's about Carl Jung. It's about everything except Dune. This whole thing has been nothing about Dune. We
Yeah,
get to hear about the Muad'Dib for 1 second, and then the rest is about just pontificating about Satan and
yeah.
revelation. This is what the whole thing is about. Nothing
Yeah.
to do with the point that we're supposed to be addressing.
And Frank Herbert did shrooms or
Oh yeah, the
peyote a
shrooms.
couple times, so he's always high. It turned into always on drugs.
Oh, by the way, psilocybin is shown to be effective in treating depression.
It
But
helped
my
my
dear,
dad's
psilocybin is
dementia.
evil and it's from the devil. Everything's satanic. It's a satanic panic. We must
Was
be panicking because it's satanic.
Did she know vaccines are sorcery? Evil. Revelation says so. So silly. It causes microclots, and I'm going to be in the grave, as Christ brings a sword says.
Why don't we have Christ brings a sword? He's so amazing. He's going to tell us about Jonah. And why did you ban him?
Because I gave him like 6 warnings, and I said, if you insult me again, you're gone. So he did. So he's gone. And he did twice.
Don't whales have really small esophagus? They really couldn't swallow a person. Isn't that true?
Yeah, I think most whales can swallow people.
Because they eat plankton. Well, at least for baleen whales, right? The baleen strains out the seawater, leaves behind the plankton, and then they use their tongue to scrape it into their esophagus.
But the text doesn't even say it's a whale. That's just an interpretation that people have.
Yeah,
well, they didn't know about fish. And
they drew a whale on the United States and said, "Look, the United States look like a whale." Literally, that's what they did.
We don't know what the animal was that even swallowed Jonah. We have no idea what this animal is. They just said it's a whale.
Yeah, they said it was a giant fish in some of the books. It doesn't necessarily say
we don't know what that is. Like, we don't know what this thing could be.
There's some big ass river catfish. It could have been something like that, I suppose.
Or mythological. It could be some kind of mythological fish that just exists for the story.
We're gonna talk about a big ass river catfish on Friday, and Hannah Barone. You want to be on that on Friday, Brenda? It's going to touch on the transgender issues and the stupid trans investigation nonsense. Bullshit.
It was so ridiculous. I mean, you have this attractive woman, and you're like, wow, let's try to demon. They did this to Michelle Obama too. The first lady.
I know.
They did this disgusting stuff where they're like, Michelle Obama's not really a woman because she has broad shoulders. I was like, give me a break. This is disgusting. It's misogynistic. It's homophobic, and it's just grotesque.
Well, we can go further into that. Do you know what a Morganite wife is, Mr. Oz?
No.
It's basically a breeding program by the European elites. They like their women small and thin boned and petite. And so they deliberately chose that it was basically deliberately bred their partners to fit a certain stereotype that they wanted.
That's disgusting. I'm looking it up. Anyways, let's finish this. I'm going to look that up. That doesn't look good.
There are a couple different terminologies that are used, and some people have been offended on both sides of this. And so, when you have the Mahdi being used over and over again of Paul, the main character here, when you also have Messiah being used as a quote of the main character, obviously, whether Muslim, Jewish, you believe in the Maitreya and so forth, or, obviously Christians believing that Jesus is the Messiah, people their ears are going to perk up. And then when you read the description of the film, and it does say this, and we've seen guys commentate on this before, whether it's Spencer Smith and others, and literally quotes and says this, quote, Paul rises to leadership through military strategy and political maneuvering, but his superhuman powers and ability to fit himself into pre-existing religious infrastructure allow him to force himself upon mankind as their Messiah. Now, Joe, we can look at that and say, wow, well, obviously it's clear. You have him as this messianic figure. You have him as the Mahdi. And he himself says, some people call me a Messiah and others a false prophet. Now, we're going to be the latter on that. But, Joe, it does seem like this messianic element.
Paul thought didn't think he was a prophet.
But you know what's funny? Don't they believe that Paul is a Messiah for them? Paul of Tarsus? What's their problem with Paul? Don't they love Paul?
Yeah. Well, Paul Atreides didn't view himself as a Messiah, but he was a prophet in the sense, not that he was speaking for God. He wasn't sure, right? Because Paul was speaking to two old people, right? Every once in a while. He wasn't sure who they were. Or was that Leto that spoke to those two old people? I think that was Leto. Yeah. But I think those were the AI.
From this shroom-eaten guru who wrote the film, obviously it seems like they're pushing narratives in an ecumenical move that does seem very anti-Christ-like.
Absolutely. He's a powerful picture of the Antichrist, and we'll get into it in a moment. Chad and I are very, very aware that he's, when you look at the Dune books, and we'll get into that later, it's pretty clear that he's not saying later that he's a great guy, but he's definitely presented, even Yahoo points out, that he's not really a villain either. And you have a positive feeling about him, which is true. Most people go away rooting for him. You're definitely not, rooting for the guy that's 500 pounds, the pedophile, and his demon son. That you're meant to root for this guy in this movie. Yet at the same time, it's also supposed to be a tale of caution. But we'll get into that in a moment. But Chad, if I was to ask you, if I was giving you a list of things about, Paul Atreides, the messianic figure, and I was to say, but I didn't tell you who it was, and I just mentioned certain things about someone, just your blank slate right now, other than knowing what the Word of God says. Who do you think I'd be describing? What if I said, and I'll give you a few points, okay? He's being prepared with occult powers, and people are being implanted to accept him, and so forth, which of course would be, who. He will pretend to be the Messiah. He'll be a false Messiah. He'll have mystical or occult powers, He
has no occult powers, though. Like, whatever. It's all, like, physical. So weird.
He hears voices. He'll kill millions. Ultimately, he'll be worshipped. He'll take the throne. Basically be the God figure. I mean, biblically, who am I describing?
He doesn't become God either. That's his son. Becomes the God figure.
Antichrist.
Absolutely.
Antichrist. Absolutely. You.
This is not the Sting movie. This isn't the 1984 one. This is a new one.
You couldn't get around it. You can't look at those descriptions, and you cannot see in the film. Then we watched this together, wanting to make sure we had enough information, and then went back to the books and watching reviews and watching what the people are saying about it. And yes, as Joe already mentioned, we could look at it and say, oh, well, he ends up being a bad guy if you actually read it. But then there's some other stuff that happens, specifically when he has twins, with his son becoming pretty much a half version of a god versus a half version of a man, and then becoming the God Emperor and so forth in this, further
and
along.
Paul
that's not
being
even
John
the film.
the Baptist.
And even other people pointing it out. Yeah,
secular people.
Even secular people have pointed out specifically that he is the John the Baptist character, in that once he is humbled again after becoming very proud from taking this messianic position, that guess what? In the beginning of this film, the whole time he doesn't want it to happen. He's like, no, I'm not the Messiah and so forth. And, obviously there's some Southerners that are just waiting to just take him on as
Yeah.
their Messiah. Really
Yeah.
interesting.
And maybe
Joe.
we should talk about that right now.
I think that's important.
This is dumb.
And when you're watching this film, and hopefully you just say, I don't want anything to do with it. I pray for that. But when you're seeing this film, there is this narrative going on during the movie specifically that he doesn't want to go down south, because if he goes down south, he knows those Southerners who have a different accent, who are called fundamentalists, that they're going to immediately accept him as Messiah.
Okay, let's talk about that twist. If I just describe without thinking of the movie, I talk about how Hollywood characterize, the characterizations and of Christians often, and how they try to make him look backward. I say, okay, these people are considered backward. They're considered Southerners, and they have a funny accent, and they're called fundamentalists, and they are described as being narrow and so forth. That's all in the film, but who would that typically describe when the average person sees the movie?
Oh yeah, they would think.
Yeah.
It's not my. How is it their fault that average Americans are stupid?
And besides, in a book series and a movie based on a Messiah, why wouldn't you draw from cultural references to Jesus Christ, to John the Baptist, to all those things? That makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah. True. But even like the Southern thing, right? It's like the North and South. It's like the Northern Hemisphere and the Southern Hemisphere. Like there's more worms in the Southern Hemisphere. There's more storms in the Southern Hemisphere. If you watch like the 1984 movie, Princess, what's her name?
Irulian?
Yeah, Irulian does a 10-minute dialogue in like the director's cut of the movie, right? It's like a long ass in dialogue, and she talks about Arrakis and all the planets, and she talks about all the storms. It's like a lecture that Paul Atreides is watching from her about all the planets, and she talks about all the storms and stuff like that, and why the storms are there, and they're not sure what type of population there's in the Southern Hemisphere and stuff like that. It's all the stuff they're finding out about the people in the South is from the Fremen people in the North. The Empire doesn't know about the people in the South. It's the Fremens talking about the people in the South, that they're more tribal, basically. They're more folksy because they only have interactions with the Empire people, with all the commerce and trade and stuff with the people from space, basically. So I don't know why they are making fun of Southerners in the United States. They're making fun of them. They're making fun of the American tropes. But like this movie, the people in Europe and stuff that watch this movie aren't necessarily going to know. People in China that watch this movie aren't necessarily going to have any idea about Southerners in the United States. Hi, Tyler.
Christians.
And they're waiting for a Messiah.
Absolutely.
That's constantly waiting for the Messiah. And they're easily led for hundreds of years with a false hope. That's also in the movie. So on one hand, it takes a slam at Christianity. On the other hand, it seems to be a conditioning for Antichrist. And I'm very aware that the author is saying, well, I'm actually warned about following messianic figures. Well, ultimately, he's warned about following the Lord Jesus Christ, because he presents this messianic figure in a very positive terms at first until you get to the next book. But what people say, Chad, we probably should point this out. When you get to Dune Messiah, well, it's like, yeah, he's presented a lot of, hardcore Dune nerds will say, yeah, well, actually, he shows that this guy, he's really a villain ultimately because he's selfish and Shawnee, he kicks aside and he wants his own purposes and he destroys a bunch of people, even the Fremen end up being destroyed and so forth, which is all true, right? But what's interesting in the movie, he's still the hero that you want to root for. Now, if you know the lore, you realize, okay, he ends up making bad decisions. But if you are honest, you'll say, hey, look, he didn't have a lot of ways out. He's presented with these different options, and ultimately he sees the way to save the Fremen and himself is to make these moves. So it's kind of these situational ethic kinds of things. But what I find interesting is most Dune nerds will say, yeah, but the next guy, Leto the second, his heir, he rules for what, 3,000 years. He actually is a benevolent dictator. And for him, it's not like the ends justify
Not
the means,
really.
really. He
No,
becomes a good guy.
no,
And
he is
really
not.
what happens.
And a benevolent dictator.
It comes down to they're mad because the Dune series cautions against believing in messianic figures. It says they're bad, and
Yeah.
then they're mad about that. They don't like it.
Yeah, it was more a Muslim messianic figure too. It's like the Muslim Jesus, not the Christian Jesus, because a Muslim Jesus that is supposed to come back. It's supposed to be come back with the sword to conquer.
And plenty of people have seen an analogy between spice and oil. I mean, people did that right away with the book.
Yes, how oil rules and the world's how the economy of oil rules everything. The spice must flow, the oil must flow. Like there's all these analogies between the two. So weird. But yeah, this is more like the Fremen are more off with the Muslims. The Empire is more off the Christians. So if anything, it's the Fremen are Muslims. They're formed off the sort of like Isa talked about it, like a fusion between Buddhist and Islam, not necessarily one or the other. And if you can read about it, like Frank Herbert wasn't shy to explain where he got his ideas from. You can find out from stuff he wrote about it. So like people want to, I hate this death of the author shit. Go ask the author why he wrote the things he did instead of making up your own ideas about it. Like then they keep referencing, well, Yahoo said. Yahoo's not a person. Like quote the author of the article. Like not Yahoo. These guys are silly. What else was he going to say? And of course, Paul didn't want to be the Messiah. That's about it. Oh, Leto II was like a ruthless dictator. Like ruthless, not a benevolent dictator. Ruled with an iron fist. It's like there was like an assassination attempt on him like thousands of times or something like that. They kept trying to overthrow him over.
Yeah. The Beni Theliou kept sending Goas of to kill him, right?
Yeah. Yeah, they kept failing until he allowed himself to die.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. Like people don't.
It's
like
all part of the plan. It's all part of the plan.
Yeah. And he never really died. Even when he quote unquote died, He didn't die.
His consciousness was split up into the. I don't think they're going to cover this, so it's not a spoiler. So his consciousness was split up into sandworms and survived on.
Yeah. Because the sandworms were basically wiped out because of him, because he terraformed Dune, basically. And then he terraformed Dune back.
Happened is Paul Atreides, he went the wrong way. But think about it. When you look at the one he's the John the Baptist to, his son, Leto, when you look at that, how does he roll? He also rules with an iron fist. He rules in such a way where, he destroys the ability for you to harness technology. He separates people. You have no interplanetary travel and so forth. But for him, the ends justify the means. What I'm pointing out is it's very, very convoluted. That seems like a contradiction. Although some, nerds of the books will say, well, he actually is showing that guy as being evil too. However, he has wonderful things to say about Leto II in the book. So it's really convoluted to see exactly where he's coming from as far as his own motives. But I believe when you look at him barely coming out with what he was really inspired by, saying just a little bit here and there and what he was writing about, I see these novels as really promoting a, you got a couple options. I mean, he basically has a do what thou wilt, very libertarian mentality, because when he's asked about his faith, he says, I believe you can mine certain things from religions, but basically he says, do your own thing. You use your own judgments, learn from your own mistakes, basically saying, be your own God, do what thou wilt, meaning.
So horrible to learn from your own mistakes. These guys probably never learn from their own mistakes. They just keep making them. Keep making the same mistakes over and over and over again. Listen, people watching this. Paul and Leto II were right. They saved humanity. In the stories. That's the whole point. They actually saw that humanity was going to go extinct if the course of history did not change, because they can foresee the future. That's the like the premise of the story. So that's what, when he said, well, if you watch the second movie, he said, I can see one path forward. And that's what the path he took. And then part of that path, it means he had to give it up and let his son take over. Like, this is where he's like becomes John the Baptist. So, but yeah, all the species must. It wasn't that they were going to die out to because of like the fall of their own. They were going to die to an ancient enemy, the artificial intelligences that they created in the past. So they're going to die to an ancient enemy, artificial intelligence, that they fought a war before in the past. So that's who they had to do a dysphoria, or not dysphoria from, dysphoria, like spread out all over the place.
Don't submit to the Lord Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, because you don't want to follow any real messianic, you don't want to follow our Savior. You want to basically realize that you're kind of basically your own God, he's saying, because he's saying you basically, ethics derive from you. And when that happens, guess what? You don't have to have one Hitler, you just have millions of Hitlers.
Yeah, and Joe, I know we could go on and show
Ethics derive from you.
Hitler, Tourette's.
Yeah. Whatever. I'm not going to. We can have another show about ethics.
The biblical and what the Bible actually says concerning the Antichrist. And we could see a lot of parallels with what's going on here, but we could also see them in Islam, which a lot of Muslims are upset about this movie as well. But I mean, we see this as an end times deception anyways, the ecumenism and the Antichrist. Everyone's going to come and worship him. I mean, right. It's not like, oh yeah, it'll just be the Muslims or it'll just be the New Agers. No, they're all going to come. There's going to be a great falling away as well. And so he's going to deceive people with the great signs and lying wonders and so forth. But Joe, a lot of Muslims are upset because they're seeing, oh, well, the Mahdi. And, we actually have a message you guys can check out, not only at Blessed Hope Chapel. We can put a link to the description of the original message, but we even put it up here on our channel because of how important it was, showing what we believe concerning eschatologically, what lines up with the Bible and the end times and where the Antichrist might come out of. Because a lot of people have different views. Some people believe he's going to be an atheist, which I don't see that at all. Some people believe that he's going to be a Jewish person. Some people believe he's going to be a pope. I think the false prophet fits that much better. So do you, and you express that in the teaching.
They're all over the place. Who cares? I almost think we're like done here.
But Joe, when you look at it from this perspective and you see the Mahdi and coming, the Mahdi, it says very clearly in a number of different texts, when you look at the hadiths, which are the commentaries on the Quran, that he's going to come and he's going to snap the crosses, right?
Yeah.
He's going to wage war
and kill the Jews.
And they're going to tell them, hey, there's a Jew behind. The rocks are actually going to cry out, there's a Jew behind here. Come and kill him, right?
Right.
And it's radical when you actually look at this and you see the war being waged on behalf here of the Mahdi, the Messiah, and so forth. and it lines up with a lot of Islamic
It's really
stuff.
crazy. If you go back and look at our
I don't think I want to go into this topic because they always demonetize this.
Well,
But
I just think it's really interesting that he's trying to say that Muslims don't like it, and then he goes into Islamophobia. I think that's a really fascinating thing, where he's like, yeah, these Muslims don't like it, but these Muslims are like really awful, bad people that just want to kill everyone. I'm just like, huh, that's interesting.
well, they set up this like dilemma like between the two factions. Like there's factions within Islam and within Christianity that want this war.
But it's like weird that he's like, these Muslims are my allies, saying the movie is bad, but the Muslims are really just bad people.
Yeah,
It's just a weird narrative, like back to back.
I know. Okay, so I think we're done with this. So I don't know if you guys have any closing thing.
Sure, I got a closing thing.
Okay.
Yeah. marauding messiahs that are going to slaughter all your enemies. Bad. That's bad. It's really bad. Okay, don't do that.
Thank you. What about you, Issa?
I think we need to treat people well and treat people good and hopefully not have a dystopic future. And we need to work together in unity to have a positive future.
Okay. Neo says majority of people that hear Antichrist, they automatically think it's against Christ, and it's not. Actually means instead of Christ. I think there could be disagreement on that, but that's fine. Whoever the Antichrist is going to be, it's going to be somebody who universally is accepted as the Savior. Gotcha. I think there could be disagreement, honest disagreement on that too. That's okay. But I am.
And you can do magic. You can do magic.
Cool. So I opened with the sermon. I'm going to close it with one. Anyways. As we tread the sands of time, please like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Become a channel member for 99 cents. Pass around the donation dish by going to patreon.com/Ozian or send in a super chat for $1,000 or $2 or nothing at all. Anyways, as we tread the sand of time, let us carry the wisdom of the desert in our hearts. May the stars guide us, the spirit of Arrakis empower us, and the strength of our convictions lead us to a future where humanity thrives, unbound by fear, united in the purpose and spirit. Mahdi! Mahdi! Mahdi. There. Thank you. Thanks for coming on stage, both of you.
And bless the maker and his water. Bless the coming and the going of him. May his passage cleanse the world.
Yes. Thank you. We're going to drown in this rain. That's all I know. People, if you read a single book, read Dune. It's awesome. It's hard to read a little bit.
I've read all of them. I enjoyed them. I've never read the ones by his son.
Yeah.
And I didn't watch the miniseries. I just couldn't get into it at that time.
Yeah. I've watched all the miniseries, all of them. I just love Dune. I want to play the MMO too.
Okay.
But I've signed up for the beta already. I did it like a month ago. and somebody sent me this. People know I love Dune. I talk about it all the time. Anyways, when people do the perfect book apologetics for Islam, I always appeal to Dune as the perfect book. Anyway, sorry guys, I'll just ramble on about Dune forever. Thank you so much for coming.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
And show up tomorrow if you can. And
I'd love to.
I'll see you then. Bye.